getting back to the technology, so battery, we say the smartification is a thing that is maybe not so developed for the German car manufacturing. But when I listen to you, then the main point is basically they lost a competitive advantage, right? And they need to make sure they keep up with the new competition.
Yes, and here, of course, indeed, Germany was not at the forefront and is not necessarily at the forefront in development. That comes from a different kind of tradition, a different kind of innovation culture, if you want. The catchphrase is Silicon Valley. So we can observe that, of course, with this change towards e-mobility, the whole smartification was also pushed. It's not the only reason, but it was a major factor. Why? Because with these new challenges of charging, you need a new charging infrastructure, you need a new charging, how to say this, routines. So you need new controls like, what's about my power supply here in my car? Where is the next possibility to charge? How long would it take? And all these kind of things. Also in steering the batteries in the car and all that. Yeah. So lots of these electronic devices then were developed around these questions. And then independent of that, of course, you have the whole general move towards infotainment, the new communication forms, and people expect that this is also integrated then in the car. Yeah, so that is definitely there. And then we have this thing that, yes, Germany, as we can also see in all this, the same thing, the same problem like in the consumer electronics, Germany lost out in this over the last decades. If we think like that in consumer electronics, Germany was still leading until the 1970s, and that was something that was very fast then lost, especially to Japan at the time. And even when the old good record player was in use, but then the new discs and things like that, and then of course also with the new electronics and iPhones and stuff. And I think personally, I would argue like, well, it's always of course a problem when you are set in a certain way, and then to move to something completely different is difficult. But then one should also say that Germany was not that bad at the beginning in developing these kind of things. Like if you think of the MP3 player that was invented in Germany, why wasn't it not turned into a successful product to be sold? It were other people then who sold this thing on the mass market, not Germany. And so there's something deeper why these kind of things failed. One factor might be that you have a different kind of innovation culture in development and innovation culture. That is like this catchphrase Silicon Valley, like how companies interact, what kind of agile and flexible exchange you have of people, also turnover, like this very established and in other ways very advantageous culture of Germany, working culture, that people stick to the company. The company is rather loyal to tested and trained employees. You do not have a hire and fire mentality as such. Yeah, that has advantages. But then the same mentality might create also disadvantages when you're in a new market and things develop very fast, and then communication is hindered and slowed down. So that is like the bigger picture behind it, maybe, yeah, as a suggestion why this happened. And now we have the fact that obviously, yes, Germany is behind this. And try now, when we talk automotive especially, car manufacturers try to catch up, to change something in this. And then in the typical situation of transformation, of change, we have these numerous conflicts. Most notably, of course, in automotive at the time, to develop a new car needs many years. You think the model 5 years, even 10 years ahead. And when this new model comes onto the market, the integrated um, electronic devices are possibly already outdated, yeah, because you planned them 3 years ago, something like that, and now this world changes so much faster than the classical market of the vehicle, of the cars.
You mentioned some interesting trends, and I hope that's not the trend of the German car manufacturer that with the consumer electronics in Germany, right? That more or less died within a few years, right?
Yeah.
There's also the example of the solar power industry, right? That was more or less, killed or didn't survive in Germany, right? And it went down from 80,000 employees to almost zero.
Yeah.
At the same time, for the coal industry, we're talking about, I think, less than 10,000 or so workplaces that we fight for really hard and invest a lot of money in that. While currently the wind power industry is suffering and could be the next candidate for more or less dying and being outsourced to some other country. Is that a trend or so in Germany? Is there something missing? Why this kind of innovation is happening? You mentioned the MP3 player, right? Innovation is happening. The people seem to be smart enough. Looks like the education system, something is right here, right? So that the invention is happening, but then we stick to the old technology and then buy it from China or from the US while it was invented here. Like, it doesn't really make sense economically, right?
It needs possibly there really to have a closer look to the technology involved and what were the reasons. Like the examples you got, these were very much cost driven. That the photovoltaic industry as such died down because these are things easily produced, much cheaper somewhere else. Yeah, and that is of course something in which Germany actually classically never competed. Germany never was really like a producer for cheap mass consumption, so to say. Yeah? Germany always worked by quality. And nonetheless, it's a bit different, of course, with consumer electronics. And I mentioned this example of consumer electronics because that is, of course, the background why now we have these problems like with the smartification in automotive, because all these new developments, innovations were developed in the sphere of consumer electronics and then transferred into the cars. And if you don't have this kind of industry, then you have to take it in from outside from the beginning. Yeah. So and now the struggle is of course, and the question is of course, to what extent can the car industry build up these kind of competences by themselves? Yeah, and in what way? Like what is the interaction, the interplay with other suppliers, with established suppliers of these technologies, and what do you want to produce in-house?